Why is it that the more we explain ourselves, the less people seem to respect us? Why is it that silence, which many confuse with weakness, often unsettles people more than the loudest argument? And why do we live in a world where people believe power comes from speaking louder when in reality, the most unshakable power often comes from saying nothing at all? These are not just rhetorical questions. They cut right into the heart of how most of us have been conditioned to behave. Society tells you to prove yourself, to justify your decisions, to explain your side of the story, to make them understand. And yet, when you do that, when you chase, when you beg, when you over-explain, you hand away the very power you're trying to protect. Don't think about it. We live in an age of constant noise. Social media thrives on outrage, endless debates, and long captions begging for validation. Your inbox is full of explanations. Why someone was late, why someone disappointed you, why someone needs another chance. Noise everywhere. But here's the paradox: noise rarely convinces anyone. It only numbs. Silence, on the other hand, pierces through like a blade. The Stoics knew this long before the internet existed. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, they lived in a time when reputations could be destroyed by rumor, when emperors were judged by their words. And yet, the true Stoic answer was not to chase approval or defend every accusation. It was to remain centered, to let silence become a fortress. Because silence is not emptiness, it is presence without performance. Now, let's get real. Modern life makes silence harder than ever. Someone leaves your message on scene and your mind races. Did I do something wrong? Should I explain myself? Should I send another text? You craft a long paragraph trying to show your worth. But the more you type, the more invisible you feel. That is the trap. The moment you explain to someone who already chooses not to understand, you abandon yourself. But what happens when you refuse? What happens when you stay silent? That's when the power flips. Suddenly, they're unsettled. They wonder, why aren't you reacting? Why aren't you chasing? Did I lose control? And in that stillness, you reclaim what was always yours, your dignity. Here on StoicCraft, we don't talk about theories you'll forget tomorrow. We talk about practices that change how you live, how you carry yourself, how you protect your peace in a noisy world. Today, we're diving deep into 6 truths about silence, why it's not weakness, but your most underrated superpower. And if you've ever felt the sting of being ignored, disrespected, or misunderstood, this might be the reminder you didn't know you needed. So before we go further, I want you to pause and let this affirmation sink in. My silence is my power. Say it out loud. Write it down. Hold it in your chest, because by the end of this journey, you'll see why silence is not retreat, it's victory. Silence makes them feel your absence, not just hear your words. That's the paradox most people never see coming. We are trained to believe that words solve everything. If someone misunderstands you, explain harder. If someone ignores you, speak louder. If someone disrespects you, demand recognition. But here's the truth. The more you talk, the less they listen. The more you chase, the more they run. The more you explain, the less value your words hold. Silence works differently. It doesn't push, it pulls. It doesn't scream for attention, it makes attention unavoidable. Think about the last time someone you cared about suddenly went quiet. Didn't your mind race? Didn't you start wondering, what happened? Why aren't they responding? Did I do something wrong? That's the hidden power of silence. It plants questions in the other person's mind without you saying a single word. Psychologists call this the tension of absence. Human beings are uncomfortable with gaps, with unanswered questions, with space where there used to be noise. We crave resolution, but silence denies us that. It holds up a mirror. When you stop responding to someone who mistreated you, Your absence forces them to confront their own actions. It's not vindictive, it's reflective. You don't punish them with silence. You simply refuse to keep explaining yourself to people who've already shown they don't value your words. Consider a modern example. Someone ghosts you after weeks of constant communication. Your instinct is to double text, to pour out your feelings in long messages, to demand an answer. But the more you chase, the more invisible you become. Now flip the script. You stay silent. No explanations, no follow-ups. Suddenly, they are left alone with their behavior. The silence whispers louder than your protests ever could. I saw what you did, and I won't lower myself to beg for respect. Stoic philosophers understood this dynamic long before social media amplified it. Epictetus taught that the more we value things outside our control, the less control we truly have. When you chase someone's attention, you put your peace in their hands. You say, "My sense of worth depends on whether you respond." That's not freedom, that's captivity. Silence, however, breaks the chains. It's a way of saying, I value my dignity more than I value your reply. And here's the twist. Silence doesn't just change how they see you. It changes how you see yourself. Every time you resist the urge to over-explain, you strengthen your self-respect. Every time you choose stillness over chasing, you train your mind to detach from what is outside your control. Over time, this discipline builds a kind of inner authority that no rejection can shake. Modern culture rarely praises silence. Instead, it glorifies reaction. Entire platforms reward those who shout the loudest, argue the longest, or post the fastest. But look closely. Are those people truly respected, or merely consumed for entertainment? Real respect doesn't come from noise. It comes from groundedness, from the rare strength of someone who refuses to beg for attention. So the next time you're tempted to defend yourself, to chase after someone who walked away, to prove your worth through endless words, remember this: silence isn't weakness, it's presence. It's the act of letting absence speak louder than noise. It unsettles manipulators, exposes the immature, and creates space for the truth to surface. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Your silence may confuse them. It may even anger them. But that's not your burden to carry. Your only responsibility is to protect your peace. And sometimes the loudest declaration of self-respect is made without saying a single word. When life hurts us, when someone betrays us, disrespects us, or simply walks away, the first thing most of us want to do is talk. We pick up the phone. We pour out our story to friends. We scroll endlessly on social media. We look for anyone who might tell us what we want to hear. Noise feels comforting because silence feels unbearable. But here's the problem. The more noise we create, the less truth we actually hear. Silence is uncomfortable, yes, but it's also powerful, because when you finally stop running to others, you start hearing the one voice that matters, your own. Marcus Aurelius said it perfectly. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. In other words, what hurts us most isn't always what happened, it's the story we attach to it. And when you sit in silence, those stories begin to unravel. Think about it. Maybe someone walked away without explanation. Your emotions scream, "They left because I wasn't enough." But in silence, when the storm settles, you realize the truth. They didn't leave because of your worth. They left because of who they are. Or maybe you feel angry that someone treated you poorly. In the noise, you say, "If I confront them, maybe they'll understand." But in silence, you see clearly. You don't need them to understand, you just need to stop giving them space in your life. Science actually supports what the Stoics already knew. Studies on mindfulness show that silence calms the amygdala, the part of the brain that fuels fear and anger and activates the prefrontal cortex, the center for clarity and decision-making. In simple terms, when you sit still, your brain literally rewires itself for wisdom instead of impulse. That's why so many people regret the messages they sent in anger. They reacted in the noise instead of waiting for truth to rise in the quiet. And here's something even deeper. Silence separates your emotions from your values. When you're hurt, emotions yell. Explain yourself. Defend your worth. Don't let them win. But values whisper. Protect your dignity. Guard your peace. Let go. In noise, you can't hear those whispers. In silence, they come alive. The truth is, silence doesn't make the pain vanish, it makes the meaning clearer. It helps you admit things you've avoided. I stayed too long in that relationship. I ignored the red flags. I don't need closure. I need boundaries. These realizations may sting, but they're liberating because they put the power back where it belongs, in your hands. And that's the shift Stoicism teaches us. Instead of reacting faster and louder like the world expects, you slow down. You let the storm pass. You let clarity rise. And once you hear the truth in silence, you no longer need validation, explanation, or noise. You simply act with calm confidence. So the next time you feel that urge to call, to text, to post, to explain, pause. Don't move, don't speak, just sit in the silence, as uncomfortable as it feels. Because in that silence, the truth you've been searching for is already waiting. Let's talk about something people rarely admit out loud. The obsession with closure. How many times have you told yourself, if I could just have one more conversation, one more chance to explain, one more chance to hear them out, then maybe I'd finally feel at peace. It feels logical, almost noble. You want clarity. You want fairness. You want the ending to make sense. But here's the hard truth. Begging for closure almost always brings more pain, not peace. If someone truly respected you, you wouldn't have to ask them for closure. They would give it freely. Think about it. When a relationship ends with honesty, when someone looks you in the eye and says, "This isn't working, but I appreciate what we had," you feel the sting. But you also feel the dignity. That's closure given with respect. But when someone avoids you, ghosts you, or leaves you in silence, and you go chasing after explanations, you're not finding closure. You're actually giving them more control over your healing. This is the cycle many fall into. First, you're hurt. Second, you demand answers. Third, they either ignore you or give half-hearted excuses. And fourth, you end up even more wounded, wondering why they still don't get it. The cycle repeats until you realize the truth. Closure isn't something they give you. It's something you give yourself when you finally stop chasing and start accepting. The Stoics were clear about this. Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it." What does that mean here? It means that instead of begging someone to validate your pain or confirm your worth, you embody your values by walking away in silence. You stop waiting for their worth to fix what their actions already destroyed. You stop handing them the key to your peace. And I get it, silence is hard. It feels unnatural to let things end without a proper goodbye. You want that final scene, that perfect dialogue that wraps up the story. But life isn't a movie. And most of the time, the people who hurt you aren't interested in giving you peace. They're interested in avoiding responsibility. So why keep showing up to a conversation they've already left? Modern psychology even has a name for this: self-abandonment. It's what happens when you ignore your own well-being just to keep chasing someone else's validation. Every time you beg for closure, you're abandoning yourself. You're saying, "My healing depends on how this person chooses to respond." And that is a dangerous place to live. Real closure happens when you decide to stop writing unsent letters. Stop drafting paragraphs you'll never send. Stop rehearsing speeches in your head. Real closure happens when you finally accept what their actions already told you that they weren't willing or capable of giving you the respect you deserve. And in that acceptance, your power comes back. You see, silence doesn't mean you weren't hurt. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you've chosen to prioritize your own peace over their approval. And here's the beauty of it. The moment you stop begging for a closure, you start breathing again. You stop chasing conversations that will never happen, and you create space for a self-respect to live. So the next time you catch yourself thinking, if I could just explain one more time, if I could just make them understand, pause. Ask yourself this instead. Why do I need them to confirm what I already know? Why do I need them to tell me I'm worthy when I can decide that right now? That's where closure begins, not in their response, but in your decision to let silence be the final chapter. Words are tricky. People use them to charm, to manipulate, to excuse, to disguise. Someone can apologize 1,000 times and never change. Someone can make promises every week and never follow through. That's the danger of relying only on what people say, because words can lie. Silence, however, cannot. When you go quiet, masks start to slip. Without the noise of explanations, without the distraction of arguments, people reveal themselves in the simplest way possible, through their actions. Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "What you do speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you say." That's the essence of this truth. When you stop talking, you give people the stage to act, and their actions will tell you everything you need to know. Think about the last time you pulled back from someone. Maybe you stopped reaching out first. Maybe you stopped giving so much of your time and energy. What happened? If they respected you, they noticed your absence and responded with effort. If they only used you, they vanished without a word. And if they manipulated you, they probably got angry or confused, not because you wronged them, but because they lost control over you. Silence works like a spotlight. It illuminates patterns that words try to cover up. A person who truly values you won't need 1,000 reminders of your worth. They will show it through consistent presence. A person who doesn't care won't suddenly wake up respectful after another long explanation. They already told you who they are, not with their lips, but with their behavior. In today's world, this lesson is even more important. We live in the age of performance. Social media lets people curate apologies, post polished words, and present the version of themselves they want you to believe. But step back, go silent, and watch closely. Do their actions match their captions? Do they live what they post? That's where the truth hides, not in their words, but in the gap between what they say and what they do. And here's why this matters. Silence protects you from being fooled by illusions. When you're constantly talking, you give people space to keep spinning stories. But when you step back, when you say nothing, the stories collapse under their own weight. What remains is reality, though, undeniable, sometimes painful, but always freeing. Yes, it hurts to see the truth. It hurts to realize someone you trusted was only there for a convenience. It hurts to accept that some people will never change no matter how much you explain. But this pain is cleaner than the endless cycle of chasing words. Pain from truth heals. Pain from lies lingers. So the next time someone tries to talk their way back into your life with rehearsed lines and clever excuses, resist the urge to debate. Don't explain, don't argue, just observe, stay quiet and let their actions speak. Because silence is not passive, it's discerning. It's not cold, it's clear. And it will show you who really belongs in your life without you having to say a single word. There's something deeply human about wanting to be understood. When someone misjudges you, when rumors twist your name, when people assume the worst, you want to step in and defend yourself. You want to say, "That's not who I am. Let me explain." And in that moment, it feels like the right thing to do. But here's the paradox. The more you explain yourself to people who already made up their minds, the less power you hold. Confidence is not proven by how well you explain. It's revealed by how little you need to. Marcus Aurelius warned us, "Don't waste what remains of your life in speculating about your neighbors." Translation: stop spending your limited energy trying to fix what others think about you. People will believe what suits them. Some will never see you clearly, no matter how many words you pour out. And if you keep chasing their understanding, you are not protecting your reputation, you're sacrificing your peace. Think of it this way. Imagine someone accuses you of being selfish. Your instinct is to fight back, to detail every sacrifice you've made, to prove your kindness. But in doing so, you hand them control. You let their perception dictate your actions. The Stoic response: say nothing. Let your life, your choices, your energy speak. Because confidence doesn't beg to be noticed. It simply is. This doesn't mean you'll be praised for it. In fact, silence will often be misunderstood. People might call you cold. They might say you're arrogant. They might label you as uncaring. But here's the hidden gift. The people who can't handle your silence were never meant to truly know you. If someone requires constant explanations to respect you, then what they value is not you, it's their control over you. True confidence is calm. It doesn't need to correct every false impression. It doesn't need to chase after validation. It doesn't need to justify boundaries or defend decisions. It simply acts rooted in clarity. And here's the beauty: the right people, the ones who belong in your life, won't need an explanation. They'll understand your silence because they understand your character. Now, this isn't easy. It takes discipline to hold back words when your pride feels attacked. It takes strength to stay grounded when your name is misused. But every time you resist the urge to explain, you build unshakable self-trust. You remind yourself, I know who I am. I don't need them to know. That's real freedom. So the next time you feel the fire to defend yourself, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this to live in alignment with my values, or am I just afraid of being misunderstood? If it's the latter, let it go. Because confidence is not in proving your worth to others. Confidence is in knowing your worth so deeply that you no longer feel the need to prove it at all. There is a quiet kind of power in walking away without a speech, without anger, without drama. No slammed doors, no long paragraphs, no final performance. Just silence. That silence, more than anything you could have said, delivers the lesson. And the lesson is simple. My peace is more valuable than this connection. Most people don't know how to handle this kind of energy. They are used to people who argue, who beg, who fight for closure, who break down just to be heard. When you go silent instead, you remove yourself from the game entirely, and that unsettles them. They expected you to return, to chase, to plead, but you don't, and suddenly, the power they thought they had evaporates. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Think about how this applies here. When you detach silently, you leave the other person alone with their imagination. They begin replaying the silence, wondering what you're thinking, questioning themselves, maybe even regretting their actions. And the truth is, whether they change or not is irrelevant. The lesson wasn't really for them. It was for you. Detachment in silence teaches you something vital. You don't need to fight to prove your worth. You don't need to convince anyone to respect you. You don't need to stay where your soul isn't valued. Walking away without a word isn't cold, it's clarity. It's the realization that not everyone deserves access to your energy. And here's the beautiful paradox. Silence often speaks the loudest after you're gone. They may never admit it, but they will feel it. They will notice the absence of your presence, the calm you used to bring, the loyalty they took for granted. And while they wrestle with that, you've already moved forward, lighter and freer. This doesn't mean silence is easy. It takes enormous discipline not to send that final message, not to defend yourself one last time, not to get the last word. But when you choose stillness, you're no longer reacting from hurt, you're responding from strength. You're saying, without words, I don't need this battle to define me. I don't need your approval to heal. I'm already whole. So remember this. People don't always learn from confrontation. They learn from distance. They don't always change when you scream, respect me. They change, if they ever do, when your absence forces them to realize what they've lost. And if they never realize it, that's fine too. Because the ultimate lesson of silence isn't about them. It's about reclaiming yourself. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop abandoning yourself for those who don't care enough in return. And that's the final, liberating truth. Your silence is not just strength, it's healing. It's dignity, it's freedom. So here we are, at the end of this journey into silence. And maybe by now, you feel it in your chest, the shift. The recognition that you don't always have to fight back. You don't always have to explain. You don't always have to beg. Because silence, when chosen with strength, is enough. Let's bring it all together. Silence makes them feel your absence more than your presence. It allows you to hear your own truth instead of being drowned by noise. It frees you from chasing closure that was never going to be given. It exposes reality by stripping away the illusions that words create. It becomes the highest form of confidence because you no longer need to explain yourself. And finally, silence in detachment teaches the ultimate lesson that your peace matters more than their approval. That is Stoicism at its core. Not coldness, not indifference, but clarity. The discipline to hold back when the world demands a reaction. The wisdom to know that dignity doesn't shout. And the courage to walk away quietly, with your self-respect intact. And if you've been listening and felt memories rising, times when you over-explained, times when you begged, times when you let someone else decide your worth, don't see those moments as failures. See them as training. Every mistake has prepared you for this new awareness. You can choose differently now. You can choose silence. So here's what I want you to take with you. My silence is my last word, and my most powerful one. Let that affirmation become your anchor the next time your emotions scream at you to react. Whisper it when you're tempted to defend yourself. Remember it when you feel disrespected. Because every time you hold your silence, you build strength no one can take away. And now, I'll ask something simple from you. If this message resonated, if it reminded you of your worth, if it gave you a sense of calm in a noisy world, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video right now so more people can discover it. Share it with a friend who's been struggling to let go. Drop your affirmation in the comments, because your story and your presence matter here. And most importantly, subscribe to StoicCraft. Each week, we bring you timeless wisdom shaped for the modern battles you face, whether in love, in work, or in your own mind. The world may demand your words, but sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stay silent. And in that silence, you'll find not weakness, but freedom.